Episode 7 حلقه هفته My Sea Adventure. How my sea adventure began. باشید سرحاتیامن و چروکامن چهار دست بگیر.
The mutineers didn't return that day. However, Hunter never woke up again and died sometime the following night. The captain had been shot in the shoulder and the leg. However, the doctor stated that he would certainly recover provided that he was given enough time to rest. That left us just four healthy men, the doctor, the sequoia, Gray, and myself. After eating lunch, the doctor picked up two pistols, a musket, a sword, and a treasure map and walked quickly into the woods to the north. I thought that he was probably going to see Ben Gunn.
I hate the stink of blood and all these dead bodies around. Help me wash out the house,
said Gray. I started to wash out the log house. It was hot and it was filled with blood and dead bodies. I hated it and wanted to get away. After a moment's thought, and while the sequoia and Gray were not looking, I filled my pockets with biscuits, took two pistols, and immediately left the log house. This was the second reckless thing I had done, and this time I had left only two men to protect the stockade. But like the first act, it would help to save us. I had decided to go down to the White Rock and find Ben Gunn's boat. It was beginning to get dark now, and as I walked among the trees, I saw a boat. It was made from a frame of rough pieces of wood covered in goat skins. There was also a paddle. The boat was small even for me. I also saw Silver and some other men aboard, throwing from Hispaniola to the beach. I wanted to cut Hispaniola free from her anchor to stop the pirates going to sea. I could see the pirates' campfire further along the beach, and just one light out in the water which showed me where the Hispaniola lay. I carried the little boat down to the water and with some difficulty climbed in. The tide had changed and was going out. It was hard to get the little boat to move in the right direction, but despite this, I managed at last to get near the ship. When I found the anchor rope, I took out my knife and started to cut it. As I was cutting, I could hear two men arguing and fighting in the ship about me. It was clear that they had drank a lot of rum, and I knew one of the voices. It was the voice of Israel Hands. On finally cutting through the rope, the ship suddenly started to turn and move with the tide along the narrow passage of water. It moved quickly, and my boat moved along with it. At one point, I saw that I was close to the waves and the beach where they were breaking. The campfire was closer now, with the pirates all around it. And I heard words from a song I had heard them sing many times on the ship.
But one of her crew was still alive, of the ship that sailed with 75.
Then I lay down in the bottom of that very small letter boat, and I believed that I was going to be thrown out into the sea to die. I sat on the waves for hours, expecting to die. Also, I was exhausted. Slowly, I fell asleep and dreamed about home and the Admiral Benbow.
Episode 7 حلقه هفته باشد Alone at sea از بطن دریای دا.
When I woke, the sun was up, and I found myself about a quarter of a mile off the southwest end of Treasure Island. However, the shore was very rocky and the sea rough, so I couldn't rest trying to go ashore. I tried to paddle, but the boat was difficult to steer and water started to come in. I felt horribly frightened. How could I hope to reach land? Some time later, as I moved around the coast, I suddenly saw the Hispaniola in front of me, less than half a mile away. Her sails were moving freely in the wind, and it was clear to me that no one was sailing her. I thought that the two men must be asleep from the rum. If only I could get on board, I might be able to return her to her captain. I knew what I needed to do. I sat up and started paddling again. Despite water coming into the boat, I went on paddling until at last I was close to the ship. I could see that one of the booms was hanging out over the side of the ship, and when a large wave came, I pushed myself up and reached for it.
Episode 7 بخش 3 Israel Hands Janko در کاکسواین یکشوان کسین هاری کاره بو هاجودنا پاپورات گل فلینتی دابو Janko در فلینتیز گنر جک دارو الماس فلینتی بو.
As I dropped down onto the deck, the ship came into the wind, swung around and nearly threw me back into the sea. I managed to stand up. Then I saw a man lying dead further along the deck. Near him was Israel Hands sitting against the side of the ship. His eyes were closed and his face was white. I could see blood on the deck and a large cut on his leg. I thought that the two men must have killed each other. At that moment, Israel Hands moved a little and asked,
I need some brandy.
I quickly went down to the cabin. It looked terrible and it was covered in empty bottles. Then I managed to find a little brandy as well as some biscuits, cheese, and raisins for myself.
That is better now.
After drinking, now Israel was stronger and asked me where I had come from. I have come to take the ship. And please think of me as your captain. He looked at me but said nothing. I don't like your flag, Mr. Hans. I threw the pirate's black flag into the sea. I didn't trust Israel Hands, but I knew that I could trust him on one point. We both wanted to beach the ship somewhere safe, where she could easily be returned to the sea. Hans offered to tell me how to do it. So, with Hans giving me step-by-step instructions, we brought the ship slowly into the North Inlet. I turned the ship quickly and she started to move towards the shore. And then...
Now, boy.
While waiting for the ship to beach, I turned to face Hans. When our eyes met, we both cried out. Ah! My cry was of fear because he was now standing and had a knife in his hand, but his cry was a cry of attack. He came towards me. But I ran to the side, pulling one of my pistols out from my belt as I moved. At that moment, the ship ran onto the shore and with a huge and sudden movement fell over to one side. We both fell down onto the deck. I jumped up again and started to climb the nearest mast. On getting high up the mast, I stopped to load my two pistols, and Hans began to come up the mast after me. And then he stopped climbing and threw his knife at me.
Not another step.
Jim.
One more step, Mr. Hands, and I'll blow your brains out.
Nah, matey.
Despite the fact that it hit me in the shoulder, I fired both my pistols and Hans cried out and fell into the water below.
Episode 7 خلق هفته بخش 4 Pieces of 8 تار زر و آقای سیلوری اف قصه زور جار دوبارت کرد چون که دید بود دم دریا وانال بنه دریای زر و پارت اینا ندر.
After a few moments of fear, I saw that the knife hadn't hurt me much and I climbed slowly down. Hans was dead in the water. I got rid of the other body by lifting it over the side of the ship to join Hans. Before leaving the ship, I pulled in as many of the sails as I could. Then I dropped down into the water and walked to the beach. I was very excited and I couldn't wait to get back to the stockade to tell the others that I had got the ship back. It was late at night by the time I found my way to the stockade. As I came towards the gate, I was pleased to hear the sound of my friend snoring. When I walked in, a strange voice suddenly cried out,
Pieces of meat! Pieces of meat! Pieces of meat!
"Huh?"
Pieces of meat!
It was Silver's parrot, Captain Flint.
How goes there?
Silver cried,
Matey.
There was no time to think. The men woke up immediately. I tried to run away, but it was impossible, and they soon caught me. Silver ordered someone to go and get a torch.
Go and bring a torch.
And I waited for the light to come.